Have you ever noticed how, when you chat about rising prices, everyone seems to have a slightly different take? Like, what costs more? Why? What's coming next year?
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? And those chats, they're not just idle talk.
Right. They actually add up. These individual ideas, multiplied across millions, they genuinely shape the economy.
Precisely. What's really key here is how these personal beliefs about future prices, which might seem, purely subjective, collectively influence real economic outcomes.
Like what we buy or save.
Exactly. From what you decide to buy to where you might invest, even broader national trends, it's a powerful force, often underestimated.
And today, that's exactly what we're diving into.
Mm.
This whole world of household inflation expectations and, crucially, the role global oil prices play, specifically in India's economy.
Hmm.
We've gone through some recent, pretty in-depth analyses from economists to get you the latest insights.
Yeah, and our goal today is really to pull out the most important bits. We're looking at emerging trends, what's driving them, the impact of monetary policy, and India's, well, its particular vulnerability to oil shocks.
Kind of a shortcut to getting up to speed on something pretty critical.
Exactly. Understanding not just what's happening, but why it actually matters to you.
Okay, let's kick off with what we're calling the human element of inflation. So household expectations. Why? Why are they so important? It's not just numbers on a page, right?
Not at all. Households, I mean, think about it. They're the largest, most diverse economic group out there.
Makes sense.
And their collective decisions day to day about spending, saving, investing,
Yeah.
that directly drives aggregate demand, the total demand in the economy.
So unlike the experts, the professional forecasters.
Right. Unlike them with their complex models, household expectations are really shaped by personal experience. What you see at the shop, what you pay for fuel, what you hear friends saying. And that makes these expectations, well, pretty susceptible to swings, to fluctuations, which is why central banks focus so much on them. They're trying to keep prices stable.
Because if we think prices are going way up,
We might change our behavior, maybe rush to buy things, and that can actually sort of make inflation worse. It becomes a bit self-fulfilling.
and looking at the Indian context, there's this really interesting pattern, right? A kind of uh, upward bias.
Yes, a persistent one. For almost 2 decades, the data shows Indian households have consistently expected higher inflation than professional forecasters.
Wow. Even when actual inflation was pretty stable, like, say, between 2014 and 2020.
Even then,
Yeah.
it's a really compelling pattern. And it's not just India, actually.
Oh, right.
No, this systematic upward bias in household expectations, it's seen globally. It suggests there's a fundamental difference in how everyday people perceive future prices compared to, economists using models.
Maybe we just remember the price hikes more clearly.
That could be part of it. Maybe a focus on essentials or just how we process uncertainty. It's a big question.
But it's not all just bias, right? Policy can make a difference here.
Absolutely. There's a positive story, too. India adopted its flexible inflation targeting regime, FIT, back in 2014-15.
Okay?
And that, along with some easing global pressures and timely domestic policies, it really helped push those household expectations down from the highs we saw around 2014.
So people started to believe inflation would be controlled.
It seems so. The impact was significant. We're talking a drop in expectations somewhere between 0.15 and 2.5 percentage points.
That's quite a range, but definitely a drop.
Yeah, the study suggests it indicates better anchoring of expectations by monetary policy. People gain confidence.
But then the world changed. Things got complicated again.
They certainly did. Just as things seemed to be settling, the COVID-19 pandemic hit, followed by geopolitical tensions like the war in Ukraine.
And that just reversed the trend.
It caused a considerable uptick in household inflation expectations, yeah. And maybe more revealingly, it widened disagreement among people. Uncertainty just shot up.
People just didn't know what to expect anymore.
Pretty much. Since 2022, these inflation concerns became much more broad-based. People were worried about headline inflation, food prices, housing.
You could feel it in everyday conversations.
Absolutely. It reflected very real impacts on household budgets, on people's sense of financial security.
So digging deeper then, who tends to have these higher expectations? Are there patterns?
There are. The analysis shows older individuals, say 45 and up, generally report higher expectations.
Oh, it's that.
The thinking is it largely reflects their lifetime experiences. They've seen more economic ups and downs, perhaps periods of higher inflation in the past.
That makes sense. Your own history shapes your outlook.
It seems to.
Yeah.
And interestingly, before the pandemic, daily wage earners and self-employed people, often with more variable incomes, showed greater inflation concerns compared to salaried employees.
More uncertainty in their own finances, maybe.
Potentially, yes. And another unique point for India, unlike findings in some other places, the data suggests Indian women do not show consistent upward bias in their inflation expectations.
Huh. That is interesting. Different from other economies.
In some cases, yes. It's a specific nuance for India noted in the research.
Okay, let's talk about food versus overall inflation. Headline inflation.
Yeah.
Is one more important than the other in shaping these expectations?
Generally, yes. The analysis suggests headline inflation, the overall rate, is typically more influential than food inflation.
But I sense a but coming.
But there's a really crucial nuance. When you have high and broad-based food inflation, that can definitely keep overall expectations elevated. Food is just so visible, so essential.
Right, you see it every time you shop.
Exactly. And here's a key insight. During high inflation periods, Indian households, and this mirrors global trends too, tend to focus more on the volatility of food prices.
Not just that prices are high, but that they jump around unpredictably.
Precisely. That unpredictability in necessities can feel more destabilizing than even a steady increase. So for policymakers,
It's not just about the level of food inflation.
right, they also need to think about tackling the unpredictability, the volatility, to really address household concerns and, well, ensure social welfare, especially when food makes up nearly half, 45.86% of the consumer price basket.
Wow, almost half. Okay, so that covers the internal side, the household view. Let's shift gears to a massive external factor, oil.
Ah, yes, the global fuel. A huge one for India.
Huge is right. India imports most of its crude oil, yeah.
The vast majority. Imports make up more than 85% of requirement.
And that number's been going up.
Steadily. It was around 77-78% back in 2013-14 and projected to be over 88% for 2024-25.
So that increasing dependency means India is really vulnerable to swings in global oil prices.
Directly exposed. It impacts headline inflation both straight away and indirectly through knock-on effects. It's like this constant external pressure policymakers have to manage.
And we can put a number on that direct hit.
We can. Empirical analysis suggests a 10% increase in international crude oil prices could increase India's headline inflation by around 20 basis points.
Basis points, so that's 0.2 percentage points.
Correct. Right away, contemporaneously, it's a pretty immediate impact.
And some studies suggested it could be even higher.
Yeah, earlier work, like the RBI's own projection model, had suggested a 10% oil price hike could lead to a 30 basis point increase at its peak. So around 0.3 percentage points. It really highlights the significant inflationary punch oil prices pack.
But despite being so exposed, the government does try to soften the blow, right? Acts as a kind of shock absorber.
That's a good way to put it, yes. Even though petrol prices were deregulated in 2010 and diesel in 2014, meaning prices could follow global markets.
They don't always, fully.
Exactly. Government intervention, mainly through changing excise duties and taxes, has often muted the impact. They've prevented the full international price rise from hitting consumers at the pump.
Can you give an example?
Sure. So in 2020, the government actually increased taxes on fuel, partly to fund pandemic spending, even as global prices fell initially.
Okay.
But then when global prices surged later, they did the opposite. They cut excise duties in November 2021 and again in May 2022, specifically to contain price pressures.
So it's active management, adjusting the dials.
Definitely active management of pump prices,
Yeah.
a real balancing act between consumer impact and government revenue.
Okay, so how exactly does a rise in oil price spread through the economy? You mentioned direct and indirect effects.
Right. The direct channel is the obvious one. Higher prices for petrol, diesel, LPG, the fuel and light component in the CPI basket, that's about 9% weight. You pay more directly.
Makes sense. And the indirect.
Those are broader. Higher oil prices mean higher transportation costs for everything. For businesses, it means higher input costs.
So the price of making stuff goes up, the price of moving stuff goes up.
Exactly. That leads to what economists call cross-sectional spillovers, price increases spreading across different sectors. And it pushes up core inflation, too.
Core inflation being inflation without food and fuel.
Correct. It shows the underlying trend. And crucially, rising energy prices also have the potential to unhinge inflation expectations. People see fuel go up and start expecting everything else to follow.
A psychological ripple effect.
Precisely.
And looking forward, this oil dependency is not getting smaller, is it?
Quite the opposite. Projections show India becoming the largest consumer of crude oil globally between 2023 and 2030,
The largest, wow.
accounting for more than a third of the projected global increase in demand. So growing demand combined with that already high import dependency, it points to heightened future vulnerability.
Meaning we're potentially even more exposed to oil shocks down the line.
That's the risk. And it suggests the need for perhaps more intensive intervention than in the past,
Yeah.
but more importantly, a real long-term strategy.
Beyond just managing pump prices day to day.
Exactly. The core insight is that India's future stability is deeply linked to reducing this reliance. That means seriously pushing renewable energy sources and also exploring things like favorable bilateral treaties for oil imports, locking in potentially better deals or more stable supplies. It's about building resilience for the long haul.
Right, so let's try and connect these dots. We've talked households, we've talked oil. How does policy bring this all together? It sounds like a really complex balancing act.
It absolutely is. Managing those household expectations we talked about and navigating these global oil shocks, they are both central pillars of India's inflation management strategy.
And the flexible inflation targeting, the FIT regime, that's been key on the expectations front.
The evidence suggests it has been successful, yeah. Alongside proactive monetary policy, it's helped anchor those expectations, which really underlines how important central bank credibility and clear communication are.
If people trust the bank's commitment, it helps keep expectations stable.
Exactly. Makes the job of maintaining stability much easier.
And that's why the focus needs to stay on headline inflation, the overall number.
That seems to be the takeaway. Given how much headline inflation influences households, especially when food prices are also volatile.
And the direct hit from oil prices on headline.
Right. All that means a consistent policy focus on the overall inflation rate is vital for managing expectations and ultimately for social welfare.
But the risks don't go away. You still got potential supply shocks.
Always. Things like abnormal rainfall messing with food prices, especially if it happens alongside other issues, that can really push household expectations up.
And oil prices are always a potential flashpoint.
Constantly. These factors demand ongoing vigilance and timely fiscal and monetary responses to prevent inflation from getting out of hand. It's a continuous monitoring and adjustment process.
And finally, there's this challenge of actually communicating policy effectively, isn't there? Because people think about inflation so differently.
That's a huge point. The research highlights the non-rationality and heterogeneity across households.
Meaning, people aren't economists and their experiences differ wildly.
Pretty much. Someone struggling with daily expenses perceives inflation very differently from someone planning long-term investments. Their lifetime experiences, their current situation, it all shapes their view.
Makes it hard to find a message that resonates with everyone or to predict how everyone will react, like getting a diverse group to agree on a single financial plan.
Exactly. It's a deep challenge, and it leads to the suggestion that we need further refinement in inflation surveys and adjustment techniques.
Better tools to understand what households are really thinking.
Yes, to capture those dynamics more accurately, which in turn should help policymakers design even more effective, maybe more targeted strategies in the future.
Okay, so wrapping this up then, what does it all mean for you listening? We've unpacked how your expectations about prices combined with everyone else's genuinely move the economic needle. And we've seen how those big global oil price swirls affect everything from your commute to your grocery bill, while policymakers are constantly trying to steer the ship.
So maybe a final thought to consider. How might your own lifetime experiences, those memories of past price changes, good or bad, be subtly shaping your own economic choices right now?
Interesting.
Could understanding these bigger patterns, knowing your perception as part of this collective dynamic, actually empower you to make more informed choices about spending, saving, investing perhaps? Something to mull over.
Definitely food for thought. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive today. We hope you feel a bit more informed and maybe even more curious about these forces shaping our economy.